Good morning, good afternoon, or even good evening, depending on where you're joining us for today. We appreciate you making time for us today to spend some time talking about why companies choose NetSuite's proven cloud platform. I'm pleased to be speaking with you, and we'll take the next 45 minutes or so, and I'll be introducing Garth later on in the program. But just to start off, one of the big things I'll walk through real quickly is our agenda. Oh, actually, I'll start with our presenters. So as I mentioned, I'll introduce Garth later on, who's the SVP of Global Support and Services from Penguin Computing. We'll really spend the majority of the time during the conversation with Garth. My name is Ranga Bodla. I'm responsible for industry marketing over here at NetSuite. And one of the big things you may or may not know about NetSuite, it goes to market by industry, and we support a number of different industries across software, services, manufacturing, et cetera. And one of the big things that I've had the pleasure of being able to do over the last 6 years since I've been at NetSuite, I actually joined over from SAP, and we get to work with a lot of different customers across a number of different industries. And consistently across that time frame, what I've discovered is very similar things that those customers have found and why they've chosen NetSuite and why they are finding benefit. And so hopefully you'll get more of that perspective over the course of the next 45 minutes or so. I'm going to start off and talk just about kind of a brief overview of NetSuite so you're aware of who we are. I'll talk about Penguin Computing, of course. We'll be mostly having that conversation with Garth, and then of course the interview and question and answer. So if you have questions throughout this, please don't hesitate to write those questions in. We'll try to answer those as we best can, and we'll go from there. So I want to start here, which is just to talk a little bit about the state of the business today. And of course, most of you are aware of this, that the world is changing, right? And I know it's often overused, but I think it's important, which is the only constant is change. And I think one of the things that is consistently there in that concept is that companies have to be thinking about maintaining a startup state of mind. Companies need to think and operate like startups because the opportunities that are there today are global. And regardless of whether you're a small company trying to think larger or if you're a large company trying to think smaller and more nimble, the same concepts apply across those types of companies. Companies have to be responsive, they have to be nimble, or they run the risk of being quickly disrupted. Data is a gigantic weapon, and it's becoming more important every day with the emerging trends like the Internet of Things. In today's world, every company is and needs to be thinking like a cloud company. And as we all know, there's a huge trend in the industry to move to the cloud. NetSuite is the leader in the cloud, and as many laggards start to make noise about their cloud solutions, it's important to understand what differentiates what NetSuite has to offer versus what we frankly see as many of the other offerings out there in the marketplace. And we have numerous examples of companies who have used NetSuite to power ahead, whether you're talking about companies like Lyft that are changing the transportation world, or Snapchat that are running NetSuite to change how we communicate, a GoPro. And of course, you'll hear from Penguin Computing today, who really embodies that as a very specific example of that. Now, this is a much more tactical look at how companies are running their business today. It's very fragmented, it's siloed, it's inefficient. But the real big thing is most companies, when they have a system landscape like this, they can't respond to the changes that everyone faces in the real world. That same constant of change that I talked about before. Having to replace 10 or 15 systems. It's difficult to introduce new things and be able to go after new concepts and new ideas because you're stuck on these old technologies and you're stuck with these brittle connections that are frankly very easy to break. And a lot of the times it becomes easier not to touch anything. And as a result, companies are frozen and aren't able to change and make the changes they need to go after these new markets. And that's really why NetSuite's here. I mean, when we look at why we've been able to be successful, these are not just the pillars to our success, they can also be the pillars to your success. And in the center of it all is this idea of a global ERP designed for a modern company, and enabling it to become the most deployed, advanced, and end-to-end cloud ERP system in the world. Now, we go to market and we differentiate ourselves with the strongest platform in the industry, and that's one of the things you're going to hear about as part of this conversation, is not just a platform in the traditional sense of, hey, this is the platform I use, but the platform of what enables a business to build what they're doing and to build their strategy and build what they're doing forward. And we'll talk more about that as we go through this conversation. So let's really talk about really the 5 pillars that distinguish why businesses choose NetSuite. And I'll walk through each of these in some detail before I go and introduce Garth and really have that conversation further. But you know, the first one is being designed, a global ERP platform designed for a modern business. The second is the best cloud platform in the industry. The third is a unified data model that allows our customers to maximize their use of data as a real competitive weapon. True omni-channel commerce, allowing your customer to be at the center of their business. And then I think probably this is one that sometimes is overlooked but is really important, is this idea of being built for your industry. It's important to have both the broadness of a solution, but also to have those industry-specific capabilities as well. So let's walk through each of those. So we talk about being designed for a modern business and being a global ERP. One of the big things is NetSuite is cloud first and cloud only. And one of the big things here is that all of our customers are on the same version of the product. This is an amazing thing. We have 30,000 organizations that use NetSuite day in and day out, and they're all running on the same set of software. We do 2 major releases every year, and weekly minor versions applied with virtually no downtime. Your investment is working with NetSuite 24/7 by 365 days. But the big thing is you're not stuck on an old version with no access to the latest and greatest functionality. And you're always on the most leading edge product and version in the market. In the modern world, you need to be able to carry out business 24/7, but you need to do it anywhere in the globe. Whether that's, you need to have multi-company, multi-subsidiary, multi-site, multi-time zone, and all of that being built into the same platform. The second is our platform itself. And when we talk about our platform, it's one of the best kept secrets in the industry. Many people would think that if you had a solution in which all 30,000 customers were seamlessly upgraded, it would mean the solution would have very little flexibility. But in fact, that's not the way we operate. We think that customization is not a bad word. In fact, almost every single customer that uses NetSuite customizes it in some way. And that's one of the first things we built into our system, in our platform, to enable customers to be successful and enable folks to continue to be able to move forward with our system. The third key pillar, really, though, is our unified data model. And this is really the key to enable BI the way that companies need it today. Our unified data model allows you to report and analyze your entire business from end to end. And not just financials and HR, and not just financials, but real-time with no need to build complex data warehouses with multiple moving parts. Our unified data model delivers those analytical capabilities day one in real time from a self-service basis. And this is a real differentiator from us as compared to platforms like SAP that are out there in the market. And it allows our customers to define who is able to view, and analyze, and transact what across their enterprise. The fourth pillar really then is about commerce. And this is about impacting the customer experience. This is how more and more businesses are trading today. And as more and more companies are transacting online, and you even saw it with the statistics over the Thanksgiving weekend. You had you had Black Friday, you had Small Business Saturday, you had Cyber Monday. But the reality was more and more people were buying online. They were researching online. That had such a tremendous factor on how people were getting product. And that's just on a B2C basis, but even from a B2B perspective, that's another important part of this as well. And that's the fourth pillar or fourth piece of this. And last but not least is then being built for software. And that is, this is just one of the industries that we support. But I think that it's important is in each of the industries we support, we have customers that are in it. We have dedicated experts that understand it from an implementation, from an account management, from a support, from a product management perspective, as well as specific functionality and customers across each of those. And each of those pieces are what make and differentiate NetSuite from the competition, enable us to deliver a dominant position in each of those industries, but also enable our customers to get up and running much more quickly and much more seamlessly than other products out in the market. And as a result, the numbers don't lie. Our customers are able to improve their business visibility, improve their financial management, improve their things like inventory, customer, IT management. They have measurable benefits across each of these avenues that they've been able to realize from NetSuite, from each of those. And so really, in summary, those 5 pillars kind of represent why companies are choosing NetSuite and why they're able to be successful in NetSuite. But I think the real, the real part of this conversation is that I want to now kind of shift gears with you and introduce Garth into the conversation. And I think Garth can give you a very real world perspective from Penguin Computing, who is a NetSuite customer that switched over from SAP to NetSuite, and to talk a little bit about that. So Garth, I want to go ahead and give you a chance to introduce yourself, and then we'll go through and introduce Penguin Computing, and then we can talk a little bit about that in more detail. So Garth?
Thank you very much. So my name is Garth Thompson, and I'm the Senior VP of Global Support Services and IT at Penguin Computing. I've been with the company for going on 13 years now, and before that, I've been IT service support and ERP for 20 plus years in the industry. So been around a bit and seen a lot of different ERP systems at this point.
Thanks, Garth. And Garth, do you want to go ahead and introduce, just kind of give people the perspective on who Penguin is and Penguin Computing is and what you guys do?
Sure.
And
so Penguin Computing is, we are started out as one of the only Linux-based hardware integrators back about 15 years ago, specializing in Linux and servers. Since then, we've grown a lot. Now we're calling ourselves the pioneering compute storage networking solutions. And we deliver these on open platforms. So OPC, OCP, software-defined networks, Linux, our HPC in the cloud offering. So we have a huge offering of products and services to our customers around HPC and enterprise compute right now. And recently, we just got Tundra, which is our own product. This is the first time that we're making our own product and not acting as an integrator. And we have 9 of our Tundra systems placed in the top 500 this year, and 7 of those, I believe, are in the top 100 fastest computers in the world right now. So it's been a huge year for us. We're based in Fremont, California, is where our main factory is. We also have satellite offices in San Francisco, Atlanta, Manassas, and then DC. And we do everything in-house. So everything is brought into our Fremont factory. We do all integration, the testing, the burn-in, the QA there. Our support teams are all very experienced senior Linux sysadmins who are all based in Fremont, or some are advanced in Atlanta and Manassas. The core of our team is in Fremont. Everything's done in-country and in-house. And that's Penguin. We're a very dedicated technical company who loves what we do, actually.
Awesome. And you may have already said this, and I may have just missed it, but I'll ask it anyways. And so how long is, so you said you've been at Penguin for 13 years. How long has Penguin been around and as a organization or company?
I want to say 15, but I'm always lagging a couple of years behind. So I think it's actually longer than that now. It's 15 to 17 years. I have to think about that. But we've been around for a while.
And, obviously, as part of this conversation, you're a NetSuite customer, which is why we're talking. But can you talk a little bit about the business, when you guys brought in, when did you bring in NetSuite, and then also, kind of what was happening in the business and what kind of spurred that decision?
Yeah, so I was actually hired as the director of IT when I first joined Penguin. And one of the things I was charged to do was to fix our ERP system. And what I arrived to find was a poorly implemented SAP ERP system that over the years and through, I don't want to say organic growth, I would say organic decay, had become a total black box that nobody in the company actually understood how to work with, how to use. They'd punch numbers in and sometimes get numbers out, and sometimes those numbers were right, but nobody really knew for sure how to double check any of that. And so I was tasked to fix this. And we spent maybe 3 to 4 years trying to fix it. And countless hours, countless consultants, countless time and money spent on it. And finally, I wanted to call it. I was like, it's done. We need a new implementation. It took about another 2 to 3 years and a new CFO joining to actually make that happen. And so I was campaigning for years and years to make it happen. But we had to get a CFO that wasn't afraid of change. And a lot of CFOs, a lot of companies fear that whole like, oh, switching ERP companies will sink the company, or ERP systems will sink the company. It's too much of a resource strain. It'll kill us. We can't do it. We have to stick with what we know, even if it's painful. And I finally got a CFO that agreed it was time to change, and then we did it. We evaluated a bunch of people in the market, and NetSuite kind of hit all of the key factors that we needed, and so we just bit the bullet and did it, and it actually went remarkably well. Do you want details on the implementation, or?
Yeah, when was that, I guess, when did that process start? I know you mentioned the 2 or 3 years, but once you kind of finally got that conversation going, when did that process start and, going into the pieces?
Yeah, so what we did, I would not recommend to most people, because I have an exceptionally technical team working for me, and a couple of us have a lot of ERP experience. So we got to go ahead about Q2 that we could do the change, but we had to have it done by the end of the year. So we did a quick evaluation of like the main players, Oracle, SAP, Sage, Plex, and a couple of smaller players, and did the quick matrix. Like, here's what we want. Here are base requirements. Which ones even fit those? Which ones don't? Then, isolated the couple that kind of hit the requirements and looked at the technology layers that they were on. And this was really important for me. We run our own cloud service. I understand cloud intimately and the difference between, real cloud services versus, companies are putting instances in the cloud and calling them cloud when they're not really, and all the different flavors, in between. And so I had a couple of really, really hard technical requirements that it had to be a pure, true cloud company with one single code base. It had to have a really, really robust and open API, because after dealing with SAP, I never wanted my data locked into a system that I couldn't get out at my will, And so I wanted an API, an open system, cloud-based, and it had to be usable. It had to have a user interface that I could take a user and within not days or weeks of training, but minutes to hours of sitting down with an interface and intuitively understand it made sense. And we had to have data visibility. At any point in the order to cash cycle, I had to step into the interaction and be able to trace it both ways, upstream and downstream, and see, why are the numbers off? What happened here? Did, an order go wrong, or is it correct? Or, just actually see where it's hitting and how it's hitting the GL in every step of the way. And so after doing that evaluation, NetSuite was the only one that actually was able to fulfill all of our requirements. So we did a full implementation in 1 quarter. We started in October and we went live, I think January 11th or January 17th, somewhere in that week we went live. We did minimal data migrations. Our SAP data was so ugly and messy that most of it was kind of useless. So we left everything there except for open financial transactions that crossed the year barrier that, of course, needed to be moved over so that we could, continue to track those. And then account balances and a couple other things, product catalog and, some other stuff. And that was it. And then we started fresh, and we were hoping that Q1 would be a light. Q1 is traditionally our lightest quarter ever. And so we did this so that we'd have, a light Q1 to go through, and, there are always going to be bugs and hiccups and things like that when you move ERP systems. But as it happened to be, Q1 happened to be our biggest quarter up to date. That Q1 was our biggest quarter ever. And so not only did we go live on a brand new ERP system, we had our biggest, busiest quarter ever, and we somehow managed to survive. So it actually worked surprisingly well right out of the box.
That's pretty impressive. Can you, so a couple of things I wanted to drill into what you just described. So first of all, that's a pretty impressive implementation. Was there things, obviously, I know, just from my own perspective, obviously, that NetSuite's a little easier to implement than some of those platforms. But just, I don't know if you can describe what were some of the things that made it easier than some of the other platforms that you've used in the past and done in the past that enabled you guys to go so quickly?
So, the API in NetSuite is without a doubt the best my team's ever used. It is phenomenally easy. It makes sense. The engineers who develop the API maintain it like it works, and it's logical and coherent. Now that, if you work at a lot of companies, that's actually a rarity these days. And so we had a bunch of consulting hours, and we actually came in 40% under budget because an example would be we don't enter orders directly, right? We have our own middleware that puts our orders together, and then, used to have this horrible flat file that would send to SAP, and SAP would parse this, and it would be days to change it because it was space delimited. So one space or any negative white space in there or anything would throw off the entire file and be processed wrong. So it would literally take days to weeks with consulting effort to change a single input on our old input-output files for orders. When we changed to NetSuite, we had budgeted like a solid month to get that working in NetSuite through their API. And from not even seeing the API to having it working was a week for my engineer. And by the time he talked to NetSuite consulting to see if we needed any help, he's already done with it. And he was like, oh yeah, no, it just actually worked. It's totally logical and coherent. So a lot of the things that we expected to be really painful ended up being literally like days to weeks to implement when we had budgeted weeks to months to implement on some of these things. And then the transparency of it and the overall design of the app make it very easy to work with. Data is very easy to find. When things are wrong, it's generally very easy to track back and see where they went wrong, at what point the variables are set wrong. Customizations are super easy to make, so we customized it as we went. And literally, it's minutes to hours to make customizations and adapt it to our business requirements. And it can be done by, my sysadmins and programmers are, they're well-versed in like Salesforce.com and the other kind of platforms out there. And NetSuite just fits into that paradigm. It's the same way to edit, to modify, to update it, to customize it. And it just works. It's super easy to deal with in that respect and super fast.
So you also brought up another interesting thing that I wanted to drill into a little bit, which was you mentioned at the beginning, you're probably smarter than the average bear when it comes to cloud, given you guys operate in the cloud and obviously have some very specific expertise in that space. And you said, so obviously you were pretty diligent in your research and how you investigated these other vendors and things like that. I guess, Garth, if you look at something, you can obviously evaluate it very differently than somebody else might be able to, say an average CFO or even some CIOs that haven't necessarily been operating in the cloud paradigm. So I guess what advice would you give them of how they can kind of compare these different systems, because there is exactly what you described, right? There are true cloud offerings like NetSuite, but there are a number of others that are hosted or, single tenant, or, they claim they're cloud, it's just the cloud wash. How would you advise those folks?
I mean, so the advantage you get of a true hosted or a true cloud offering versus a hosted or a single tenant or an instance, something like that, is the code base. And what you really, really, really never want to do in an ERP system is get stuck on a code base that ages, because that's what kills you on ERP systems. I worked with Oracle, I worked with SAP, I worked with all of them. And after they age a while and you have to do updates and stuff like that, it's a painful process. It's scary. Your customizations are at risk. It creates a ton of ongoing work and stress for your IT group or your ERP group, depending on your company's setup, to manage that stuff. And so the number one factor is, it needs to be a single code base that all the customers run on, that allows customizations that are guaranteed to roll forward, and they need a consistent release cycle of features that every customer gets. And if it doesn't have that, if anybody says, hey, we have this instance thing where we'll put up an instance for you, or, it's a single tenant type, all they're doing is they're taking their old code, which is not updated, which is not a modern code base. They've hacked it and put it together in such a way that they're hosting it on servers, but all those problems exist. They're just trying to hide them under the rug from you. They have their IT teams dealing with it. The APIs are probably going to be older APIs and not nearly as robust and well-defined as APIs for modern architectures are. And you're going to run into all the connection and kind of use issues you would on older systems. It's just that their IT team is dealing with a lot of that pain instead of yours. But from the technology side, I don't want that. My company moves very quickly. We change corners or go around corners at light speed, basically. And I need to know that the architecture that I'm on is not going to hold me down and is going to be continuing growing and using modern standards and modern ideas of design. And it's kind of hard to explain to non-engineers, but any engineers out there should understand what I'm saying. It's fundamentally code that is written for the cloud is expected to behave in different ways than code that was written to be on-premise that's been moved to the cloud. And the devil's in the details. When you start doing a lot of the implementations and writing your own code to pull data to and from them, that's when you can really run into problems with older code bases, because they're not designed for that.
That makes a lot of sense. And Garth, you guys, I assume then from that description, is everything is that your essentially your IT infrastructure? Is it almost all cloud essentially from what you guys do?
Yeah. So when I took over the infrastructure at Penguin, everything was on premise, and we had Exchange and Outlook and kind of a hybrid Linux-based Microsoft stuff. And having run IT for about 20 plus years, one of the first things I was trying to figure out is where are the pain points, how do we minimize this? And as the cloud services out there became more robust, you get more for your money by going with a well-developed and well-run cloud service than you almost ever can internally, just because the IT resources to manage these services internally are actually really high. And the stress level is really high to keep them up, because expectations now for users is 99.9% uptime. They want to use it from home. They want to use it from work. They want to use it from grandma's house when they're out at Thanksgiving. The expectation is they can access their data anywhere at any time. And if you're running on-premise, that's a really hard order to fulfill. Plus, they're running on Windows. They're running on Surface. They're running on Android, Mac, Linux, everything. And so it has to be, especially for our environment where we are such a Linux-based company and we have such a mix of users and customers, it has to be web-based. If it's not web-based and it's tied down to an OS, it just becomes a nightmare for my IT team to try and manage and deal with. So at this point, I would say 80 to 90% of the services that we use are web-based and SaaS services. To the point now that I have more integrators and programmers, engineers on my IT team than I do actually desktop or traditional IT people, because we do more integrations of services now than we do of maintaining servers.
Garth, I don't know, one of the questions that's kind of come in is one of the folks was struggling just trying to understand how they get a sense of the business benefits of NetSuite versus SAP. And I don't know if you can kind of talk to that a little bit, but do you have a sense, when you guys were obviously evaluating the two, you're moving from an old version of SAP, looking at the new versions versus NetSuite. How did you guys evaluate those two, and what were some of the business benefits of the two?
So cost was the most obvious one. So the cost of implementing NetSuite was a fraction of implementing SAP, and can be done in a much, much shorter time frame. So the absolute minimum time frame that using consultants, because we would not have been able to do SAP implementation ourselves, but working with consultants, at the absolute minimum time frame we had for a bare bones implementation was 6 to 8 months, and that was pushing things, and that was too long for us and expensive. The implementation cost alone of SAP was more than what we ended up paying for the implementation and licenses for NetSuite. Then we added the licenses, and then the recurring licenses for what we were currently paying for SAP was actually just the support alone in SAP was 2/3 of the cost of what we ended up implementing and our first year of NetSuite. So there's a huge cost savings. And the efficiency gain was immediate and obvious. I think at least a 30% gain for our finance group, because SAP is cumbersome, it's dated, the interface and the way it works. It takes us a moderate to significant amount of training to get people up to speed, and time to get them kind of productive. And what we found with NetSuite is, with kind of an initial training and then a follow-up training about a month later, that especially the finance team was more productive right off the bat. Right out of the gate, they like the application. User acceptance is a huge problem with a lot of ERP systems. They're not, a lot of them, especially the older ones, are not particularly fun to use. They're not intuitive. They kind of don't follow modern standards of design, a lot of them. NetSuite was nice to use, to the point where people actually, were not complaining about it. They found it pleasant, easy to use, easy to follow and see the data. That's so hard. I mean, that gets underestimated all the time. But when you're doing something and seeing the impact of it, and in like 1 or 2 clicks, be able to see, hey, this just happened. Let's check the GL. Oh, okay, there's a GL, right? That makes sense. We're good to go. So there's a lot of stuff. And moving off of Excel, half of our company is run on Excel spreadsheets when we're running on SAP, because it's so hard to get data out of SAP in a kind of useful, relevant format. Where in NetSuite, it was a matter of minutes to get the data out that we needed. It was real time, which was also hugely important. And so from our CFO loved it. From day one, she said it was a complete win for her and her team. And within a year of our implementation, we had numbers, kind of matching our other system. We have an order management system that generates the orders and stuff. So we kind of have 2 systems that kind of track what we build and sell. And with SAP, we could never get them synced up. We could never get them within, 3 or 4 margin points. And it was always wild swings. We could never figure out which one. Within the first year, we had them like almost perfectly synced up. And if there's any deviation, it would just take minutes to go in and track where that deviation arose from and why it happened. The clarity of data in NetSuite far surpasses any ERP system I've ever used. And that's just a huge win for any organization right there.
Garth, you may have said this, and I just want to come back to it, is how long now have you guys been using the NetSuite platform?
4 years? 3 years, 4 years.
Okay, and so you've
Somewhere
been
there.
through 3 or 4. I guess you've been through probably almost eight upgrades, I guess, so far of NetSuite. What and have you guys changed your usage of the? I guess, can you talk a little bit about where all you use NetSuite, and has that expanded? Has that changed over that time frame?
Yeah, it's expanded a lot. So we do pretty much a full financial and, manufacturing, inventory, work order, WIP, revenue recognition, GL, invoicing. Pretty much all the core stuff for a company is run through it now. We started out relatively light, especially on the operations side, because we were trying to figure out how to get it to work with what we did. What we did as our model didn't quite fit into the NetSuite models. And what we do is a lot, right? We have a service offering, we have a software offering, we build hardware, we integrate hardware, we have consulting, we have professional services, and we have like ongoing recurring managed services. So we have a lot of different areas that we play in. And so we started relatively simple and clean on the original implementation. And then as we've seen new modules, as we understand the system, my users know it's like, hey, does it do this thing? No, we contact NetSuite. Oh, yes, it can do that if you add, X module or Y module. And so we've added, budgeting. We've done much more for travel and expense integration. Advanced purchasing, I think, is one of the next things we're looking at adding on. We added on WIP this year. So we kind of have a continual upgrading integration path. And the nice thing about NetSuite is it's really easy to do these implementations. They're not stressful. It's a month or so of planning. It's an implementation. It's training, and we're kind of off to the races and good to go again. So the implementation time and time it takes to actually add new features or change existing features to match business needs is literally a matter of days to weeks to do this, compared to multiple months when I was on SAP to try and get it done. And we can do it in-house most of the time.
That's really helpful. And did I understand? So you said WIP as well. So then are you guys leveraging NetSuite for all the kind of some of the manufacturing, the assemblies,
Yep.
and things like that?
Yep.
Oh wow.
All of that. So we have we wrote all of our integrations and customizations ourselves to do this. But from our order management system, which is basically configure a PC or configure a server, add drives and what motherboard and all those kind of bits. It creates the order, and NetSuite automatically creates the work order, and then that goes into WIP, and we have a change order management process also, which integrates the two. So if there's a change order either done on the NetSuite side or on our order side, the two kind of sync up. It can lock an order if it needs to be locked and not shipped before the change is made. Then all the way through to shipping and invoicing, RMAs. Everything. It's all handled through it, and it's night and day difference than being on SAP on how well we can track just everything that goes on in the system, and every bit that goes in and out the door now we can generally track.
Makes sense. Kind of, I think my only last kind of big question I wanted to ask to you, Garth, is just what's next as you guys see about where you want to go with Penguin. I mean, obviously you guys are continuing to expand quite a bit, but what do you guys see as next in terms of what you're doing with NetSuite and kind of how you look to expand your usage there?
So those are our kind of challenge rounds coming up in the future. Our global business is growing significantly. We kind of are in the process of opening up our first office in London. We do a lot of business in Japan, and we're looking at some other countries also we're starting to grow in. And so we might have to do, the global sales or NetSuite One. Is that what it is?
One World.
One World. There we go. One World.
Yep.
So, that's on the table for next year probably, or the year after at the latest. Advanced purchasing, and then really dialing in what we have. We had such an explosive year in growth right now that we're still kind of recovering from that and figuring out, okay, how do we update the system to manage that? And that was some of the amazing things. Like real time, while it was happening this year, we realized that one of our kind of new business branches needed to be handled differently as far as the way we built the servers and handled them. That the current method that we've used up till now didn't work. It only took us about 2 weeks to look at the system, design it, figure out how to implement this entirely new build process into our system, and then another 2 weeks to implement it. So in a month, from start to end, we pretty much implemented an entire new build, whip, design process in the system. And I can't even imagine how we would have done that in SAP. We could not have done it in SAP. There's just no way we could have done it. In NetSuite, it was amazingly clean and clean and clear on how we did it. And that's what you need for a tool today. That's like why we're on NetSuite, is you need a tool that you can adapt and change to match how your business changes in real time. You can't wait months and 6 months for implementations anymore.
That makes sense, Garth, and I really appreciate the perspective. I'm going to just give just one, if there is anyone else that has any other questions out on the line, definitely want to, give you that quick opportunity if you do. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. We did have one. I think I got a little geeked out, Garth, and started to go down into the geek speak with you, and someone was feeling a little too geeked out for us, so I tried to bring it back a little bit, but I don't think there's any other questions that are out there. I think I've tried to answer most of those, so I really appreciate most of the questions that most of your responses here have been able to answer that. But one other question that is here that I did want to answer is, what's the smallest small business that could handle NetSuite? And this is the question I get often asked this question, particularly from smaller companies, but also from larger companies. And the short answer to this is really, we have companies as small as 2 people using NetSuite, all the way to multi-thousand. NetSuite itself uses NetSuite, so we're clearly over 5,000 employees using NetSuite. But what we find is it's not necessarily it's not that you have too few employees that you'll be overloaded, because you get out of it what you need. And what I found is these smaller companies are able to realize free up a lot of time and benefit that they aren't having to deal with systems. Even the typical systems, they can get those maintained leveraging NetSuite. So I don't know if that answers the question, but hopefully it does. I think, Garth, I just wanted to thank you for making time for today and for jumping on the call with us. And I want to thank everyone else for making time as well to be on this call with us. And if you do have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. This call has been recorded, and we'll be sending out a copy of the recording to everyone, and it'll be available for replay later. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.